Right, and joining me on this segment of the show is Sandra Ochola. Good morning, and good to have you. It's been a while.
Yes, it has
but
been.
Good to have you and welcome aboard. And of course, the IEBC is basically what has been on the headlines for the last few days with, first of all, the CEO being sent on compulsory leave. That's Ezra Chiloba. Then, of course, with the resignation of 3 commissioners, the IEBC, of course, is in trouble as it looks. But first of all, starting off with just what's making the headlines before I get your comments on that. On the Standard, we have the headline as power game fueling IEBC, teams wars. We have the Daily Nation inside the last days of IEBC, and the Star is Chebukati, 3 wants to be paid 220 million to exit. So that's basically what's making the headlines. But Sandra, let's start off with just your thoughts on what needs to be done, the IEBC, and not just the IEBC, because this seems to be a problem that you can almost cut and paste from the previous commissions that we had to where we are now.
Yes, I do agree with it. It's an unfortunate situation given what you're saying in terms of this is not the first time that this is happening. We tend to replace our the commissioners and the heads of commissions, and particularly for the IEBC, we tend to replace them after every election process. And that, in one or another, it affects sustainability mechanisms within the institution, the aspects of continuity, so that we have commissioners and we have leaders who are getting to the institution and picking up from where the others left without that continuity and institutional history. So it's really unfortunate, and I do agree with you that something needs to be done to ensure that we have some form of consistency moving forward, especially as regards how we run our electoral processes and the kind of individuals that we give the mandate to run this institution. And from where I sit, I'm looking at it in terms of first, ensuring that we have the right people being appointed to these institutions. And the conversations you had in the mainstream media or even within the social media spaces is that Chebukati might not have been the right person to have taken that position in the first place. Mostly because his leadership skills, which we've talked about over and over again, that to a large extent that they were lacking in terms of him putting forth a cohesive institution, in terms of him showing and taking leadership and reining his troops. I think during his reign, we've had the most, in my perspective, we had the most acrimonious infighting within the institution. If you compare that with the Isaac Hassan Commission, where as much as they were having challenges, but they appeared to be speaking in one voice, they appeared to be working together.
There seemed to be some form of leadership.
Yes, there seemed to be some form of leadership. So for me, that is the first one, the kind of individuals that we choose to lead this particular commission moving forward. The second one for me will be our political culture, because we tend to politicize so many of our constitutions. We tend to politicize a lot of the processes that take place, particularly within institutions such as the IEBC, the EACC. So it's not so much about letting the commission run on its own. I think it also requires our support from a citizen's perspective, from an institutional perspective. How are we lending support to these individuals to deliver their mandate? And of course, now that again boils down to politicians. Are they giving room for these constitutional commissions to work and achieve their mandate?
And well, one might also look at it from a different perspective and say that yes, the support that we would give is through Parliament, because they are our representatives. But at the same time, because of the high interest that parliamentarians have, then they maybe by design put weak leaders at the top, or somebody who possibly is allied to them. Now, there's also a proposal from some of the members of Parliament. We discussed this yesterday with one of the panels that I had, that possibly maybe the commissioners should actually be selected by political parties. That way, if you have, for instance, a commissioner who represents Jubilee interests, another one who represents NASA interests or ODM, another one who represents Wiper interests, then that way they are likely to kind of check each other. I don't know whether that should be the way to go, because at the end of the day, the reason why we are here, as we are seeing from the evidence that's coming out, is because they seem to have taken sides. You have some that are for the opposition, others for government. And they cannot work. So I don't know if having commissioners who have been put there to represent particular party interests would be a way to go.
I wouldn't go for that
option.
I wouldn't go for that option because it's in entrenching politics within the institution from the word go.
But it is already political by the looks of it. But the very nature of the institution is very political.
And that's agreeable. It is very political. But then again, we shouldn't make it so overt that it is political, and we are more or less condoning, if I could use that word, political machinations within the running of the IEBC. What I'd go for is to choose professionals, individuals who are qualified in terms of management, individuals who have exemplified leadership qualities, like what we have seen with Chebukati in terms of what we would desire from a leader of the IEBC. And then, if we are to talk politics, then there's a way in which the commissioners can still play politics without delving into the day-to-day politics of the commission. So that if you look at what, again, I tend to compare Chebukati and Isaac Hassan. Isaac Hassan had more political acumen, if you ask me, in terms of how do you negotiate, how do you massage the egos of the political parties, how do you bring them together on the table to discuss certain issues that you know are going to affect the IEBC. So it's not necessarily looking for politicians or people who have political blessing to work within the IEBC, but it is choosing professionals, one, who are able to communicate, who have leadership qualities, who have a good idea of what they're doing, and to add on top of that, individuals who are able to play the political games without mudding their hands and feet.
Okay, I guess the argument, and I just want to see whether we can, bunt on this a little bit more, but the argument might be, you, Sandra Ochola, are a professional. And by virtue of being a professional, there are certain ways that you do things. However, you still have a political persuasion for whatever reason. And that is the same case now that we have with the IEBC, where we have professionals, quote unquote. The only problem here being that they seem to have been put quietly by some political parties or interests. But as a result, because of those persuasions, they end up now dividing the commission at the wrong time or not working professionally. So bottom line is, what if we still have those professionals, but it is clear that they are professionals who are allied to a particular party and they represent each party? The only challenge again would be not quite sure whether we have political parties per se or they're just tribal gatherings that now have a name of a party.
I think those are now the choices that we'll have to make. I'd still maintain I wouldn't go for the option of having political parties play a very important and overt role in terms of choosing commissioners. And even if you look at it within our spaces, even here where you work, we all have our political persuasions. Correct. But then we tell ourselves that we are professionals and there are certain things that we'd like to achieve, certain mandates that we'd like to achieve. So we try to find a way of balancing the two so that we are working, but then also while still
your
keeping
persuasion
true.
does not interfere with what you have to deliver.
Exactly.
Okay, well put. I guess that is well put. But finally, the withdrawal of security for the commissioners, that also now leaves many questions in Kenyans' minds as to what might be going on.
I know, and I wouldn't want to speak for the IG.
We'll wait to hear what he has to say.
We'll wait to hear what he has to say.
Well, we do know that Wafula Chebukati wrote to him yesterday asking what was the rationale behind removing the security. And of course, that exposes the chair, the chair of the commission, plus the commissioners who are still in service. But there you go. We'll wait and hear whether he's going to talk about that. But let's move on to another story now, where Tiati, Member of Parliament Kasait Kamket, has now accused the Deputy President William Ruto and Majority Leader in the National Assembly, Aden Duale, of frustrating his constitutional amendment bill to change the system of governance from a pure presidential to a parliamentary system. The Budget Committee has declined to give the bill the green light, and Duale is on record that such a bill will not see light of day. But as Chris Rairo now reports, members of the opposition are ready to push for a referendum.
Let us not, as politicians, pretend that we are going to engage in another exercise of changing the constitution so that we have political positions to allocate to politicians.
That was over the weekend when the deputy president made his position public that those pushing to amend the constitution should forget such plans. And true to his words, Tiaty MP Kasait Kamket, who has sponsored a bill to create the position of a prime minister and his two deputies, has already started feeling the heat.
The leader of majority has become an impediment to a lot of legislative proposals by members. The Murkomenos of this world, they think they are the only ones who should be talking about 2022. But, you know, we also have the right to strategize.
The bill, which is a money bill, since it will cost the government 10 billion shillings for a referendum, is already with the budget committee. But Jubilee members are ready to shoot down the bill.
What he's actually doing, if you ask me, is like driving on thicker super highway when you know your brakes are faulty and you can crash any time. So, Honorable Kamket, politically speaking, his bill days are numbered. I don't know the date when it's going to crash, but soon it will crash.
According to those who support constitutional amendments to the system of governance, the move will ensure that there is inclusivity in government.
Our institutions become weak because the people manning those institutions become partisan, because they want to respond to the government in power. So with the expansion of government, with the new structure of government, then we are going to kill so many birds with just one stone. And this must be done through constitutional amendments.
Right now, we command 175 members of parliament under Jubilee Party. Today, if Kenya was a parliamentary system of government, Uhuru Kenyatta will have been the prime minister. So whether you make it a prime minister system, we'll still win the elections in 2022.
If you want to disqualify Gideon Moi from 2022, then you shouldn't have supported Kenyatta in the first place. Because if it's discrimination about whether you are born by a president, then even Kenyatta was born by a president. So let's be fair.
It is 8 years since the promulgation of the Constitution, and this will not be the first attempt to amend the Constitution. In 2016, the opposition code failed to secure 1 million signatures through the Okoa Kenya initiative to push for constitutional reforms before the 2017 general election. The Third Way Alliance is also already collecting signatures to push for a referendum that will see the number of counties and constituencies reduced. Even as the political class remain divided on whether the country should hold a referendum before the 2022 general election, they will have to shelve that debate for now until a new IEBC and a functional one is in place. Chris Dairo, KTN News at Parliament Buildings.
All right, so the political battle continues as to whether we're going to have a constitutional amendment or not. Sandra, your thoughts on an expanded executive so that it's not winner takes it all, especially given the nature of our politics and the elections that we've had in the last few years would reveal that it's normally very close to a point where you'd imagine that whoever comes second honestly should have some say in how things are run. But currently, even if you're, literally have half the country, then it's left to whoever wins.
I do agree with you, and that's a conversation that we've had away from August 2017 in terms of how are we going to deal with those individuals or groups that lose elections. And some of the questions that were asked included how exactly do we dignify the opposition and how do we dignify election losers, not only at the national level, but even at the county level. Correct. Because we saw that even with governors, those who are vying for the governorship, you had governors and deputy governors and even MPs, individuals who lost the election. So I do agree with you, there's need to have some structure that is going to ensure that members of the opposition or those who lose or those who lose an election are still given a dignified space within the political circles to continue to engage and to continue to hold others accountable through checks and balances. The question then will be how what will this look like exactly and how are we going to do it? And then the next question will be, is it necessarily through a constitutional referendum that we can achieve this these particular goals. And from where I sit, we really don't need a constitutional referendum at this particular point. Case being one in terms of time. We've just come from a very heated political period. The public, I don't think the public is ready for another politicking process. And third, in terms of the amount of monies that could be used to conduct this referendum.
All right,
so
but,
we can't do it in one more particular way, but perhaps a referendum at this particular point might not be the answer.
One might argue that there's actually never a right time because, again, the danger of delaying it and not doing it now, if at all that's the way that Kenya would choose to go, would be the fact that come 2022, which seems far, but it's not that far, we probably are going to be staring at the same problem that we have. And again, the pressure being put on the presidency and the executive in terms of numbers and even the stakes are very high, such that then we have another very heated electioneering period come 2022.
I don't think it's much to do with the time frame that we have. It is our political systems and structures. And for me, most importantly, it is our political psyche. So that for our politicians, majority of them refuse to lose honorably. So that even once you've lost an election or once you've lost a contest, you still want to find means and ways of being within, of continuing to play the political game, so to speak. So the first option for me would be, how are we addressing, how are we approaching our political activities? How are we addressing our political psyche so that we are going to elections knowing that indeed at any particular point I might lose the election. And so what do I do with myself afterwards? And we've had this conversation in the previous shows where we are saying, like, for the opposition, there's a lot of space right now that they can fill in one way or another to ensure that they're keeping the government in check and being the opposition that is required of them to be, so that we are not playing politics all the while. You know, we have opposition parties that are already taking their place to ensure that all these things that are currently are being undertaken by the government are being checked. You know, we are hearing the opposition putting their weight behind what the government is doing. So from where I see it, it doesn't necessarily have to be those systems and structures where we ensure that individuals go back to parliament or continue playing within the political field.
There's still space for them.
There's still space for them, and it doesn't necessarily have to be within the mainstream, the executive. There are other ways through which politicians are still able to add value to the Kenyan populace without necessarily changing the constitution or overhauling our electoral
I guess
system.
another way to solve this whole problem and to ease the pressure, and also like what you're referring to, having sore losers, would be to have an effective, clear way of having elections done and overseen by IEBC or the electoral body. Because the other thing that makes us have that cycle come again is the fact that even those who lose possibly feel that they have not lost. Something has happened. It's been short-circuited somewhere. So if we had credible, free, verifiable elections that everybody, okay, I'm not sure everybody can be happy with, but at least are satisfactory to the point where even if the Supreme Court came in, they would rule that they have been done free and fair, then possibly that would help us move on after an election.
Yeah. And I think that's another blind spot that we have as Kenyans, as the electorate, in terms of how we manage our electoral processes, because the institutions managing the election is not only IEBC that manages the election. It starts right from how we form our political parties. It goes to political parties. I'm forgetting the name, the tribunal.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, the one we have. Then you have the IEBC. Then afterwards you have the court. And even to the highest, to the pinnacle of the judiciary, where we have the Supreme Court. So how are we mainstreaming our election processes and systems right from how we are forming our political parties? And you have seen this, the culture that we have even when we are conducting the party nominations and party elections. It's just a bad culture filled with a lot of bad manners in terms of how we are managing our political activities. So that even within our political parties, we are supporting a culture where we keep questioning. You know, we keep questioning the validity of an election. We keep questioning whether one loses, and we keep enabling politicians in terms of their bad activities and bad manners, so to speak, so that this is also reflected at the national level. So if you are going to change things, for me, it needs to change right from the grassroots, right from the political party systems and structures. How are we managing our elections? What is our political culture? What is our political psyche? Even before now, we start talking about elections at the national level.
Well, I guess the question that then would live in the minds of Kenyans is whether we truly are democratic and whether democracy is working for us. And it's supposed to, but question is whether we actually do actualize those tenets and principles of democracy, or it is short-circuited. Now, it is 25 minutes after 6. This is Morning Express. For now, we take a short break. We'll be right back with more stories making headlines.